You lined it up perfect. Same grip. Same swing you always make. And the ball still leaked out to the right, short and weak, like it was ashamed of you. It wasn't your swing. It was where the ball sat in your stance. 1 inch, maybe less. Today I'm going to prove that to you with test numbers that stopped me cold in my own garage. Because the thing quietly stealing distance and accuracy from most golfers over 40 isn't the club and it isn't the swing. It's a single inch of ball position that got erased from the way this game is taught to you. I found the proof in a book printed in 1957, marked up in pencil by a man I never met, in a cardboard box at an estate sale on a rainy Saturday. And here's the part that matters to you. You don't need a new driver. You don't need a coach. You don't need a $900 launch monitor. You need the floor you're already standing on, and you need to know the one reference point that almost every modern lesson skips. Let me take you back to how this started, because I didn't believe it either. It was a driving range on a Tuesday morning, nearly empty. 2 men, 2 bays apart, both of them older than me, both with that smooth, unhurried swing you only get after 30 years of playing. But one man was flushing every ball dead straight, and the other was hitting these low, spinning fades that fell out of the sky 40 yards short. Here's the thing that made me stop and stare. Their swings looked identical. Same tempo, same finish, same balance. I stood there watching for 10 minutes trying to spot the difference in how they moved, and I couldn't find one. So I did something a little nosy. I walked over, made small talk, and asked the straight hitter what he was working on. He looked down at his feet and said, "Nothing. I just make sure the ball's in the right spot before I start." And he pointed at the ground. That was it. That was the whole secret he offered. And it sounded so simple I almost laughed it off and went home. But that low, weak fade the other man was hitting, that was my shot. That was exactly the ball flight I'd been fighting for 3 years, blaming my hands, my hips, my expensive clubs, everything except the one thing that man pointed at. The ground, the spot where the ball sits. So I went home and I tested it, because I don't trust a range tip from a stranger any more than you do. I set up my phone on a little tripod, filming down the line. I dropped a range ball and I hit 10 shots with the ball sitting back near the center of my stance, which is roughly where I'd always played my mid-irons without thinking about it. Then I moved the ball forward, closer to my lead heel, just about 2 inches, and I hit 10 more. Same club. Same 7-iron. Same swing I tried my hardest to repeat. The difference on video was almost embarrassing. With the ball back in the center, I was hitting down on it hard, taking a big divot, and the ball came out low and it ballooned up with spin and dropped short. With the ball forward, I caught it clean. The divot was shallow and past the ball, and the flight was higher, longer, and it held its line against the wind that morning. Same swing. The only thing I changed was where the ball started, and the ball went a full club and a half farther with less effort. I sat down on my garage floor that night, and I asked myself one question that I could not answer. If moving the ball 2 inches does that much, why did 30 years of golf tips, magazine articles, and a paid lesson never once make me stop and check it first? That question sent me looking. And what I found is that this wasn't forgotten by accident. Let me tell you about the book. The estate sale was for an old fellow who'd passed, and his family had boxes of golf books out on folding tables for a quarter each. Most were the glossy modern stuff. But at the bottom of one box was a hardcover with a cracked spine, and it was Ben Hogan's book, 5 Lessons, The Modern Fundamentals of Golf. It was published in 1957, and this copy had been read to death. Pencil underlines, little notes in the margin in a shaky hand. Now, if you don't know the name, Ben Hogan was arguably the greatest ball striker who ever lived. He won 9 major championships. He came back from a near-fatal car crash in 1949, when a bus hit his car head on, and doctors said he might never walk again, and he came back and won more majors after that. This is a man who thought harder about the golf swing than almost anyone in history. And in that book, in the chapter on the stance, there was a whole section on ball position that the previous owner had underlined twice and marked with a star. Hogan wrote that for the normal full shot, the ball should be played off a fixed point near the lead heel, and that most amateurs ruin themselves by guessing at it every single time they set up. A fixed point, not a vague idea, a specific spot on the ground he wanted you to find before every full swing. Here's the part that hit me. I'd been playing golf for the better part of my adult life, and I had never once been given a fixed reference point for the ball. Not by a friend, not by a video, not even by the pro I paid for a lesson, who spent the whole hour on my wrist angle and never looked at where the ball was sitting. So why did a fundamental this basic, written down in plain English in 1957 by the best ball striker alive, get so quietly pushed to the side? That's where the trail got interesting and a little dark. Because ball position doesn't cost anything. You can't sell it to somebody. There's no product. And I started to notice something about where all the golf attention goes. Think about it with me. Every spring there's a new driver. It promises you 10 more yards. It costs $500, $600. Then there's the shafts, the fittings, the training aids, the swing plane gadgets you strap to your arm, the subscription apps that read your swing. There is an entire industry built on the idea that your problem is complicated and expensive to fix. And ball position is the exact opposite of that. It's free, it takes 10 seconds, and once you understand it, you stop needing half the stuff they're selling you. I'm not saying anyone sat in a room and plotted to bury it, but follow the money and you'll see why it faded. A magazine sells ads for equipment, so the articles chase the shiny new gear. A teaching pro who fixes you in one lesson doesn't get a second booking. The whole machine leans toward the complicated and the expensive, and it leans away from the simple thing that costs nothing and works. So the free fundamental got crowded out. Not banned, just drowned. Buried under noise, the way an old road gets swallowed by weeds when everybody starts driving the new highway. And I found the evidence that it works sitting in modern testing data, which is the part that really got me. Let me explain what actually happens when you move that ball, because once you see the science, you'll never guess at your setup again. When you swing a golf club, the club head travels in a circle, an arc. It goes down, it reaches the lowest point of that arc, and then it starts back up. That lowest point is called the bottom of your swing arc, and for a right-handed golfer it sits, roughly, under your lead shoulder, which is your left shoulder. Now here's the whole game in one idea. Where the ball sits in your stance decides whether you catch it on the way down, at the very bottom, or on the way up. And that one difference changes everything about how the shot flies. The launch monitor people, the ones using systems like TrackMan that measure your swing with radar down to fractions of a degree, have a name for this. They call it the angle of attack. It's simply whether the club head is moving downward or upward at the moment it strikes the ball. And the numbers on this are not small. On the driver especially, the data shows that a lot of amateur golfers hit down on the ball, with a negative angle of attack of maybe 2, 3, 4 degrees down. The tour players who bomb it hit up on the driver with a positive angle of attack, and the studies show that just moving from hitting down to hitting slightly up on a driver without swinging any faster at all can add well over 20 yards of carry. 20 yards from the same swing speed just from catching the ball on the up instead of the down. How do you catch it on the up? You move the ball forward in your stance, toward your lead foot, so the club has already passed the bottom of its arc and is climbing when it reaches the ball. That's what happened in my garage with the 7-iron. When the ball was back in the center, I was catching it steep on the way down, de-lofting the club and adding spin, which is exactly the low, ballooning, short flight I'd fought for years. When I moved it forward, I caught it cleaner at the bottom of the arc, and the shot came off the way it was supposed to. So the clue snapped into place. Ball position controls the angle of attack, and the angle of attack controls your distance and your flight. That much I now understood cold. But it opened a much bigger question, and this one nagged at me for weeks. If forward is better for the driver, and I need the ball back for a short wedge to hit it crisp, then how am I supposed to know the right spot for all 14 clubs in the bag? Was I really going to memorize 14 different positions? Because that sounded like exactly the kind of complicated nonsense I was trying to escape. And that's where Hogan's real secret comes in, the one almost nobody teaches anymore. But before I give you that, I have to tell you about the second book, because it filled in the piece Hogan left out. Hogan told you where to put the ball, but he didn't spend much time on why your body has to be organized around it. For that, the pencil marks in my copy pointed me somewhere else, to an even older book. There was a name written in the margin next to Hogan's ball position section. It just said, Boomer, page 40. And it took me a while, but I tracked it down. Percy Boomer was an English golf teacher, and he wrote a book called On Learning Golf, first published back in 1942, in the middle of the war. This is 80 years ago, and this man understood the golf swing better than most of what you'll scroll past today. Boomer's big idea was that you should feel the swing, not think your way through it, position by position. And he wrote that the ball must be placed so that it meets the club at the natural bottom of your turn, not forced there by some manipulation of your hands at the last second. He described it as building your swing like a barrel you turn inside of, and the ball sits at the one spot where the barrel naturally releases. When I read that, something clicked that the launch monitor numbers alone hadn't given me. The machines tell you what happens. Boomer told you why it feels effortless when it's right, and why it feels like a fight when it's wrong. Because here's what I'd been doing for years, and I bet you've done it too. My ball position was in the wrong spot, so my body, without me even knowing it, was making a last-second correction to try to find the ball. A little dip, a slide, a flip of the hands. Every one of those little saves is a chance to hit it fat, thin, or crooked. I wasn't a bad ball striker. I was a decent ball striker, forced to rescue a bad starting position on every single swing. Fix the starting position, and all those desperate little corrections just disappear. And that right there, friend, is the whole reason I keep digging through these old boxes. What you're getting from me tonight for free is one buried fundamental. But when I sat down to write all of this out properly, I found there was far more of it than fits in a video like this one. The full ball position rule for every club in the bag, the thin shot cured, the backwards aim mistake that builds your slice off the tee, the spine tilt and the tempo ratio that quietly hand older golfers their lost yards back, and a 90-day practice system you run on your living room carpet with no lessons and no new clubs. Over 316 pages of it, all researched and tested the same stubborn way I tested that 7-iron in my garage, none of it available anywhere but from me. If you want the complete version of what's about to start working for you, scan the QR code right there on your screen, link in the description, pinned comment for the books. Then come straight back here, because I'm not done with you yet. You don't have to train away those little saves your hands have been making. You don't have to train them out. You just remove the reason they existed. And that felt like the answer. But I still had that nagging problem of 14 clubs and 14 positions. So let me solve it for you right now, before I get to the finale, because this is the part you can use this week. Now I want to talk to you directly for a minute, because I know some of you are thinking, this is all fine for people with a range membership and a garage bay and time to burn. Maybe you play a handful of times a year. Maybe your knees don't let you practice for hours. Maybe you don't own a single training aid and you're not about to start. Good. This next part is built for exactly that, and it costs you nothing but a few minutes on the floor you already have at home. You don't need a golf course to fix your ball position. You don't even need a ball. Here's what I want you to do, and you can do it tonight in your living room or on a flat patch of driveway. Take any golf club, a mid-iron is fine, and set up like you're going to hit a shot. No ball. Just take your normal stance. Now make 10 slow, smooth swings, brushing the ground each time, and I want you to watch where the club actually scrapes the floor or the grass. That scrape mark is the true bottom of your swing arc. That's where your low point really is, not where you think it is. For most people, that brush mark shows up right under the logo on your shirt, under your lead armpit, your left side for a right-hander. Put a coin down on that spot. That coin is your reference point. That is the fixed spot Hogan was talking about, found for your body, not a book's body. Now stand a wall mirror beside you, or lean your phone against something and film it. Set up again and check whether your hands and that coin line up the way they should. You're teaching your eyes what correct looks like, so that on the course, when there's no coin and no mirror, your setup feels right or feels wrong the instant you take it. That's it. No cost. No contractor for your swing, so to speak. Just you, a club, and the floor. 10 minutes a night for a week and your body will start defaulting to the right spot without you thinking about it. And here's a second free drill. For the short game, because this is where ball position quietly wrecks more scores than the driver ever will. On your little chip shots around the green, most amateurs put the ball too far forward and then flip their wrist to try to lift it, and they either blade it across the green or chunk it 2 feet. Put a second coin down, this one just back of center, off your trail foot's inside. Practice brushing the ground so the club bottoms out past that coin, on the target side of it. That single change turns sculled and chunked chips into clean, rolling little shots that check up by the pin. No wedge purchase required, just the ball moved back 1.5 inches. I taught that living room drill to my brother-in-law, who is 61, and swore golf was hopeless for him. He doesn't practice. He played 9 holes 2 weeks after doing it, a few nights on his kitchen tile, and he called me from the parking lot, genuinely stunned, because he'd hit more solid shots in 1 round than in the previous 2 seasons. He didn't change his swing, he didn't buy anything. He just stopped guessing where the ball went. So now you can find your low point at home, and you can build a reference for both the full swing and the chip. That's already more than most golfers ever learn about ball position in a lifetime. But I promised you the finale. The one piece that ties all 14 clubs together and solves the puzzle that stumped me for weeks. And this is the part that came straight out of Hogan's book, out of the very lines the old owner had starred in pencil, and it is so counterintuitive that when I first read it I thought it had to be a mistake. Here's the problem again, plainly. Modern teaching tells you to move the ball back in your stance as the clubs get shorter. Ball forward for the driver, creeping back, 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 until it's in the middle or behind the middle for your wedges. So you're supposed to memorize a sliding scale of positions and re-guess it for every club. That's the complicated mess that made me want to give up on the whole idea. Hogan's answer was the opposite, and it's genius. He said to keep the ball in essentially the same spot relative to your lead foot for your full shots. You don't move the ball back toward the middle. Instead, you change the width of your stance by moving your trail foot, your right foot, for a right-hander. Let me say that again, because this is the whole secret. Your lead foot barely moves. The ball stays roughly off that lead heel. To adjust for a shorter club, you bring your trail foot in closer, which narrows your stance. To adjust for a longer club, you widen your trail foot out. Why does that work? Because when you narrow the stance by pulling the trail foot in, the center of your body and the bottom of your arc naturally shifts slightly forward toward that steady ball, so a wedge gets caught with a touch more downward strike. And when you widen for a driver, your center shifts back behind the ball, so you catch it on the upswing, exactly where the launch data says the yards live. The ball position relative to your body changes automatically, but you never have to guess because your lead foot is the anchor that never moves. One reference point. 14 clubs. You set your lead foot to the ball, and then you just adjust how far your back foot is from it. That's the entire system. It's the thing the straight-hitting stranger on the range was pointing at without explaining, and it's the thing buried in a 1957 book that a stranger loved enough to underline twice. I tested this for a month before I'd trusted enough to tell you. I set my lead heel to the ball every time and moved only my trail foot for club length. My contact got more consistent than it has ever been in my life. Not because I got more talented at 50-something, because I stopped asking my hands to fix a different guess on every swing. And the beautiful part, the part that makes me a little angry when I think about the money I wasted, is that this cost me nothing. No new driver, no lesson package, no gadget strapped to my wrist. Just an anchor point and a moving back foot, exactly as it was laid out for anyone to read 3 generations ago. Someone knew this. Hogan wrote it down so it wouldn't be lost. Percy Boomer explained why it feels right, back in 1942. An old man with a pencil kept the pages alive long enough for them to land in a quarter box at an estate sale. I traced it, I tested it, and now it's yours. That's the whole chain, and you're the last link in it. Here's what I keep coming back to, sitting quiet in the evening. This wasn't lost knowledge from some ancient civilization. It was printed, bound, and sold to millions of people, and it still got buried under 60 years of things that cost money and a swing you have to keep paying to fix. I feel like I got back something that was quietly taken from me while I wasn't looking, and I want you to have it too. If you're the kind of person who'd rather understand why a thing works than just be sold the next shiny fix for it, then you already know why I chase these old trails instead of the new gadgets. You want the whole road, not the billboard. So let me ask you something specific, and I actually want you to answer this one. When you set up over the ball right now, do you have a fixed reference point, a coin, a shirt logo, a lead heel, anything at all, or have you been guessing every single time like I was? Tell me in the comments. Honestly, because I read them, and I want to know how many of us were never taught this. This crowd doesn't comment much, I know that, so I'm asking you straight out. Just one line. Fixed spot or guessing. And if you want to keep walking these trails with me, follow along, because this channel is for people who are done being sold the expensive version of things our grandparents did for free. We're pulling this practical knowledge back out of the weeds, one buried fundamental at a time. The next one I'm chasing is about grip pressure, and there's a number from an old teaching manual that claims most golfers hold the club nearly twice as tight as they should, and that it's quietly killing their distance. I found the source, I'm testing it now, and when I have the proof, I'll hand you that trail too. Go find your low point tonight, put a coin on it, and the next time somebody tells you the answer costs $500, remember it was sitting on the floor the whole time. Before you go, one more thing. What you saw was just the overview. Inside the Practical Wisdom Circle, I walk you through the exact ball position reference, club by club, and if something doesn't click, you ask me directly, and I answer you myself. No robots. You belong here with folks just like you. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel anytime with one click. Come on in. So now you know where the ball belongs. But here's the next surprise. The way you hold your driver might be costing you distance. I'll show you what really works, and it starts right here.